Greetings, party people, and welcome to the Sabrina Scott podcast, where I talk all about how to claim your magic and change your life. So this is going to be just a little stream of consciousness episode where I'm talking about pop culture, and specifically I'm going to be giving spoilers and analyzing the most recent season of Love is Blind, which I do adore this show. I would absolutely go on it if it ever does casting in Toronto. I just think it would be super fun and totally up my alley. But anywho, the first 6 episodes are live. They are on Netflix, and so you can go watch that if you want to understand what the hell I'm saying. There will be spoilers in this episode, and so if you care about that, you might want to hit pause and maybe continue listening later. So the remaining episodes go live, I think today or tomorrow. And so that is why I am talking about this. So anyway, we're going to be talking about the first 6 episodes, at least as I am understanding it, as I am analyzing it. So let's get into it. So if you don't know, actually, hold on. First, I'll tell you guys why I'm talking about this, why I'm analyzing this, because some of you might be thinking, why should I care about this? It's just a stupid popcorn, bubblegum show that, like, why should I care about a reality TV show? What does this have to do with improving my life? I thought we were being highbrow up in here. And yes, we are indeed being highbrow. We are indeed improving our lives. And one of the cool things about watching this show, I think it's so interesting to me for a lot of different levels. You can kind of get this distant view of at least the way that it's curated, the way that the material is cut and presented in the show, the narratives that are being told. For me, what's the most interesting about it is being able to observe and analyze people's feminine energy and their masculine energy, being able to notice the healthy behaviors, the unhealthy behaviors, especially since for the first portion of the show, if you guys don't know the concept, people can't actually see each other. They're going on dates on the other side of a wall, and so they're just talking and having conversations and hanging out and dating, getting to know each other just behind the wall, not really having any idea what the other one looks like. And so energy and the way someone shows up really plays a big role here in terms of attraction and connection and polarity. And what's so interesting to me is that it often does change after the contestants see each other in person. So sometimes they're able to keep up that feminine energy, and sometimes they're able to keep up the masculine energy, and then sometimes it does change once it moves into an in-person situation where all these different factors around appearance and looks and confidence definitely enter more into the conversation. And so for me, this is so interesting since I'm someone who is also interested in relationships, connections, psychology, what happens when people come together. Since I'm already so fascinated with all of this, that's also a big part of why I love this show, why I find it so interesting, and why I would prefer to watch this show over like most other reality shows, because I feel like I'm always learning something about psychology, about people, about human relationships whenever I'm watching this show, even though it is kind of like brain candy and just a zone out type of thing in a way. But despite the fact that's happening, my brain always hypes up into overdrive analysis mode. And so that just goes to show that you really can make any type of anything, any kind of media, however silly or stupid or banal you might think it is, into something that you can observe, get curious about, and learn from. Definitely something I just want to throw out there. So let me get into it. I already shared a little bit on my Instagram stories a few days ago, analyzing some of the breakup moments. And so in this episode, I'm just going to assume that you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, I'm sorry. Please just go watch it, then you'll get what I'm saying. But there was a few breakup moments, right? And so what I found so interesting about some of these breakup moments that happened in the pods, we had, oh my God, I'm trying to remember everyone's name. So Jimmy, I think, was trying to choose between Jessica and Chelsea. And what was so interesting about that was, you'll notice, if you want to think about this from a masculine energy, feminine energy perspective, Jimmy was pretty clear about liking being in a masculine energy role. He wanted to be the one to initiate the conversations, to get things moving, to steer the direction of the relationship. What is so interesting is he ended up choosing Chelsea, who I think this changed when everyone moved in person. I think her energy drastically shifted. But in the pods, she did a great job of staying in her feminine energy, a healthy feminine energy in the pods. As such, she was attracting two different men who, interestingly, were both in the pods in their healthy masculine energy. They were both interested in her, the feminine energy woman, at least as she presented herself in the pods. You'll notice that she did not steer anyone towards her. She was pretty chill, and I'm not saying that feminine energy is all about being chill and like going with the flow. Sometimes it can be that, sometimes it isn't. But it's so interesting to me that this woman who was able to be in her feminine energy did have these two men kind of going after her. Another woman who had two men going after her was called AD, and so she also was in her feminine energy in the pods, not really steering things, but allowing the two different men to kind of steer those connections. A masculine energy partner will be very interested in doing that. And what's so interesting about Jessica is when Jimmy broke things off with her in order to choose Chelsea, he did so in a very, I would say, kind way. He was very chill. He did not insult her. He just said, hey, I'm feeling things more in a different direction, and I don't think this is going to work for me. And Jessica responded by basically trying to burn him to the ground and insulted him, like just railed into him. She said, basically said that he ruined her experience and he's the worst and he just needs a woman who is lame and whatever, it could never be her. And she also said, you're going to choke when you see what you missed out on. You're going to choke so much that you're going to need an EpiPen because your throat will be closing, which, as someone who uses EpiPens myself, made me very angry. I find it so vile and disgusting whenever people make jokes around that, because it is a deadly thing. And so anyone who makes jokes around that, I'm just like, you are dead to me, basically. So fuck that chick. Anyway, what is so interesting about all of that, right, is you see how the unhealthy person moves, and she is in my opinion, unhealthy masculine energy in her connection with Jimmy, because she kept trying to basically bully him in a way. That word I think is a little bit too intense, but she was kind of just pushing him into choosing her. She was being very pressuring. She was trying to control the outcome. She was being very aggressive, I think unnecessarily. And so that desire to control someone else comes from an unhealthy masculine energy type of place. And then on top of that, her just railing into him and insulting him when he was not being a bad dude. He was just being chill. He was just no, I am not feeling this. I need to choose someone else. I'm into someone else more than I am with you. And he just made his very chill choice, and she just blasted him. That decision to blast a man, for me, that is the biggest, horriblest red flag for women when they're in their unhealthy masculine energy. Who does it serve by doing that? Anyone who perceives that type of moment, that type of dynamic, as her just being a bad bitch, or her being really empowered, or her being a queen energy, for me is totally missing the point. When we blast someone for rejecting us, we are not in any kind of healthy energy at all. And we are definitely not in a healthy queen energy. We are actually in an unhealthy masculine energy. Because we are being rude, we're being mean, we're trying to hurt somebody, we're trying to control a situation by hurting somebody, which is the definition, or one of the definitions, at least as I present it in my Feminine Energy Without Bullshit course, which talks all about feminine and masculine energy. So if anyone's curious about that, let me know. But that type of control, that cruelty, that is lashed out. It's an attempt at manipulation. It's an attempt at control. And anyone who is actually confident, self-assured, and at peace in themselves and in connection with their healthy energy, both masculine and feminine energy, would never behave that way. And so the healthy energy thing to do when we're dealing with rejection is actually just to say, okay, nothing else to say. I'm like, okay, cool. Thanks for telling me. It was nice meeting you. Bye. Doesn't have to be more crazy than that. And so in this show, we also see this amazing example of healthy masculine energy in the form of Trevor, who I think is amazing. So Trevor, if you're listening, holla at me. You were cool. And so he's one of the guys that was interested in Chelsea. And so what's so interesting about him, he is such an embodiment of healthy masculine energy. So if anyone is unsure what that looks like, just go watch that show. Obviously, I have no idea what happens after episode 6, but I can tell you that in those first 6 episodes, he is absolutely an embodiment of healthy masculine energy. And let me explain why. So he shows up consistently for Chelsea. He sends her gifts. He sets up these little presents for her, which Jimmy actually did not really do till the end. Very interesting. He was decisive about choosing her pretty much from day one. And he was also not threatened by competition. And actually neither was Jimmy. They were both cool dudes towards each other in the men's living quarters. Like, they were not nasty towards each other. They both were like, it's all good. It's all love between the bros. And that is very healthy masculine energy way to go about things, as far as I'm concerned. And so he was moving towards her consistently. He did not give any shits about competition. And when Chelsea rejected him, he took it with grace. And when she was crying, he actually comforted her and said, hey, it's going to be okay. I'm happy for you guys. It's really cool that you guys figured something out. And so that is the epitome of, thank you, Awaz, of a healthy masculine energy. And how does that show up, even in the face of rejection? And so this is part of why I do find these shows, and particularly Love is Blind, very educational. So it can teach us a lot about human nature. And I think there is this interesting kind of purity in how the energy is moving back and forth between these contestants and participants on the show, when there is no visual, when it literally is just voice. And so they're really trying to focus on just that connection and that, how do their energies mix together? How do these energies work together? And so there is so much to notice and pay attention to. It's like, obviously we can see these shows as just entertainment, as fun, and don't get me wrong, absolutely I will binge this and just be glued to my bed and like be eating snacks, like absolutely. At the same time, there is so much to be learned from what we can observe just about these interpersonal dynamics and what each of these things can tell us about energy and the flow of masculine and feminine energy between people, and how does that influence a connection? How does that influence a dynamic? Pretty interesting stuff. So that was the big thing I wanted to get into, how these different people dealt with rejection, healthy and unhealthy ways of dealing with rejection. That was super interesting to me to observe how this happened in the show. And of course it is so interesting, how do things change for the better or worse when the contestants move towards seeing each other in person? And so I'm really curious how this is going to go. There's 2 contestants who are very boring, but they seem very healthy, and like they're so boring, I don't remember what their names even are, but the redheaded guy and his girlfriend, who I think was from Guatemala, I can't quite remember, the Dominican, I can't remember, but they were super cute together, no drama, no weirdness, everything seemed pretty cool. And Kenneth, the principal, and then the girl he was seeing, I also can't for the life of me remember what her name was, which is really interesting. Like, we only remember the people where there is drama or some kind of unhealthiness happening somewhere in the conversation. it's very interesting to me that even though I'm now in my personal life attracted to healthy energy as opposed to unhealthy energy, when I'm watching a show like this, I can't even remember the names of the healthy people. Or at least the people who have presented themselves as healthy so far, right? And so it just goes to show that as many of us are healing our wounding from childhood, especially around relationships, it is so easy to remember to be attracted to the pull of the unhealthy energy. And the healthy energy often, if we are unhealed, can seem very boring or uninteresting. So I find that super fascinating. And I noticed in some of those scenes with the very healthy couples, I was scrolling my phone more because there was less drama going on. They were just very chill. And I find that so interesting. It was really refreshing to me that we do see some couples on this show, at least so far. Hopefully I do not end up eating my words with the new episodes. But it's interesting to me that we see some couples so far where there really is no drama. There is no unhealthiness so far, as we have seen as the show has been edited anyway. Who knows what's happening behind the scenes? But that is just an interesting lesson to me as well about how our bodies respond to healthiness sometimes. And that can be to turn away, to become disinterested, especially if our bodies, when we're growing up, learn to become addicted to excitement or addicted to drama or addicted to that adrenaline rush or addicted to just that increase of sensation or activation or heightened emotion or stress or whatever, right? And so it's very common, and I know this was the case for me when I was younger, to be turned off or repulsed even by people who were engaging in a healthy and chill way. Pretty interesting. And we see that echoed here as we're watching the show. Pretty interesting. So I want to address, what else I want to address? So Chelsea's feminine energy and how that changed. So what was so interesting is her energy really changed when they moved from inside the pods to outside the pods. So she moved from a healthy feminine energy to unhealthy feminine energy when the dynamic moved in person. So what's so interesting about this? Part of that, I think, is because she could see Jimmy's displeasure at how she looked. So she did, unfortunately, make the mistake of telling him that she looked like Megan Fox, which I do think she actually does, but she is taller as a woman. She's not petite. She is definitely a fuller figured, curvier woman. She does have a longer chin, a different kind of facial structure slightly than Megan Fox. I do see the resemblance personally, like for sure I do. But for some reason she told this to Jimmy before they saw each other. And so you could kind of see that he was disappointed with probably the combination of all the above, that he was probably disappointed with her height, her weight, that she is not a spitting image exactly of Megan Fox. I do think Chelsea kind of shot herself in the foot with that one a little bit by bringing up looks at all. At the same time, it was pretty clear to see, and some people have done screen caps of the micro expressions of him when they first met in person after that big reveal, that he looked quite depressed. He looked quite disappointed. He looked confused. And I think Chelsea being, I would say when she's able to be in that healthy feminine energy baseline, being in touch with her emotions, again, I hope I don't end up eating my words on this because the way she behaved was quite unhealthy in some of these episodes, but I think being able to pick up on that feminine energy is very receptive. It's very intuitive. It picks up on the unsaid stuff. It picks up on the subtleties of people's micro expressions when we're in touch with our healthy feminine energy. She picked up on that. And basically, let me see if I can snap my fingers. And she picked up on that and she completely switched. And I think she moved from being in a healthy feminine energy, feeling comfortable, feeling safe, to then being in an unhealthy feminine energy because she knew, based on picking up on Jimmy's micro expressions and his disappointment, that she was no longer safe. Because she could tell that he was disappointed. And I think Jimmy, I don't think he's a bad guy. Like, I don't agree with him commenting on AD's body. I think that was very inappropriate. I don't think he should have done that. I think it was Just not an appropriate thing to do. If a man I was with did that, I would be pissed. Not because I'm jealous, but just because it's just, for me, it's disrespectful to everybody involved. But before that even happened, Chelsea clearly felt insecure. She clearly felt unsafe. She clearly felt judged. And I do think she had a reason to feel that way. I do think that it seemed, from what I can see on the show, that Jimmy was not super into her. He was a little bit disappointed, but trying to roll with it. I think he was trying to give it the benefit of the doubt, give it the good old college try. But we can't hide our micro expressions. We can't hide our energy. It was very clear that he was not completely obsessed with her like Trevor was. Obsessed, I'm being a bit hyperbolic here, but Trevor was very all about her. He just thought she was great. And I think if she had chosen Trevor from day one and then they had met in person, I do think Chelsea would have felt just completely secure with herself. I don't think any of this awkwardness would have really happened. Maybe I could be wrong. But I do think that Chelsea's switch into the insecure and unhealthy feminine, being really needy, being insecure, being a little bit trying to kind of control a situation, manipulate a situation, which is a little bit unhealthy masculine in there too. I don't think any of that would have happened if Jimmy had been able to give her more confidence, more reassurance. I think that she was only asking for reassurance because she wasn't getting it. Because he probably wasn't really feeling it, right? So then when you see this kind of nasty spiral that ends up happening with them, where she ends up getting so insecure that probably their relationship is going to be sabotaged, because Jimmy probably won't be able to dig himself out of that hole, even if he does genuinely find her beautiful and attractive, which he probably does. She's a decent looking girl. But she just has that insecurity kind of taking over her and overwhelming her. And so here you see this dance of the masculine and the feminine energy, right? Where if he was able to show up in his authentic adoration of her, which I don't think he's there yet from what I've seen on the show, I don't think he's there yet, which is why she's not feeling it, which then is triggering all of these insecurities and creating this spiral for her into that insecurity, unhealthy feminine. Right? So we see here this example of how the healthy masculine creates space for the healthy feminine to be there. And when the masculine is not able to show up in that completely confident, assured way, then that completely kind of turns everything on its head a little bit. And then the feminine energy becomes unhealthy, and then it creates this negative, unhealthy reinforcement cycle. I do think that probably if Chelsea was able to stand true in her healthy feminine energy and to say, you know what, maybe Jimmy doesn't think I'm all that attractive, but I think I'm attractive, and if he doesn't, then I don't really give a fuck. And if she just was going to embody that confident, devil-may-care, at peace within herself, I don't care if he thinks I'm hot or not, attitude, then I think it actually would have been more likely for Jimmy to step up into his healthy masculine energy, because he would have then bounced off of her healthy feminine energy and confidence. So I'm hoping I'm explaining here how these things kind of are interwoven and intertwined, and how they can feed into each other, right? The unhealthy can create the unhealthy, and then you're in this kind of spiral. And also the healthy can create the healthy, and it can create that kind of spiral, right? At the end of the day, we can't control everybody. That's one of the things I was telling to my Feminine Energy Without Bullshit students earlier this week, and talking about how ultimately healthy energy, whether it's masculine or feminine, is about our own self-sovereignty, affirming that, and also affirming the self-sovereignty in other people, and not trying to, or not wanting to, manipulate anyone else into liking us more than they do. Because why? Why bother? You know? Another interesting observation with this show, a lot of people like AD, and I don't mind her. I don't like her. I found her to be infantilizing Kenneth with her question to him about if he's ready to date someone who is white. It's like, I think he already thought about that, most likely. Like, why are you trying to create drama where there isn't any? I found that a little bit like trifling, a little bit like meddling. I just found it kind of inappropriate. That's my opinion on that. And what else do I want to say about AD? So a lot of people have commented on this online. So whenever she talks to a man, she gets in this very like soft baby voice. And personally, I find that very obnoxious. She's called herself Captain Fix-A-Hoe, which, I'm not a fan of people who behave that way, but particularly women who make bad decisions around stuff like that continuously. I'm just like, no, can we not do that? And so I think a lot of people like her. She's very cute. She's got a great body. She looks great. But for me, we see the unhealthy feminine there a little bit in the way that there is perhaps some people-pleasing stuff going on. And if it's not that, it's at least ignoring red flags, or rather it is looking at red flags and proceeding anyway. And so for me, that's a little bit of a non-starter. And I didn't like the flirtation with the other men. I just found that a little bit not the greatest. And so that can also be the shadow side of unhealthy feminine energy. And, I'm not saying that she's doing this, but it's just something I've noticed. Sometimes when people are in their unhealthy feminine energy, they do get this extreme flirtation, right? Where they're flirting with everyone, or it can be really subtle. And I think for her, it was definitely on the more subtle kind of flirtatious side of things. But there is that desire to kind of try to provoke flirtation, or try to provoke compliments, or try to provoke attention, or any of these things. And often that is something that people really only do when they are operating from a space of lack, or feeling a gap inside themselves, or feeling some kind of insecurity, right? And I'm not saying that she feels any of these things. I'm not her therapist. I don't know her. But it's definitely something that I've noticed when people tend to be in this kind of like perma-flirt mode. Obviously, there can be a lot of different reasons for people being in that mode, but for me, I do see it as a form of shadow, kind of unhealthy feminine energy. I don't think a healthy feminine energy necessarily would be pandering to male attention in that same way. Like, I think one example of very healthy feminine energy in a way that was not pandering or provoking the like stupid flirting would be Raven from a previous season of Love is Blind. I love Raven. I think she is probably my favorite person who has ever been on Love is Blind. Like, I have nothing bad to say about her other than that she gave SK another chance. Definitely not the vibe. I'm so disappointed she did that. She deserves better. But I think that she has made probably the least amount of mistakes of any person on Love is Blind who ended up single. I think she's just a good person. I think she's a very good looking girl, beautiful. She looks fantastic, confident, but her confidence is so, like, it's loud, but it's also quiet. Like, she doesn't have to go into this girly voice in order to produce male attention. Like, I'm sure you guys probably remember from that season of the show. I think it was Bartiz who was super into her and was like trying to flirt. Maybe I'm misremembering. I think it was him. Maybe I'm getting my seasons confused. But anyway, someone was like, oh, hey, you're so sexy, blah, blah, blah. And was all trying to flirt with her and be like, man, we look so good and cute together, or whatever. I can't remember exactly what it was he said. But she was basically like, whatever. And like, I'm not interested. And like, shut it down. Completely unequivocally, like, shut it down. No flirting. She was kind about it. She was nice about it. She wasn't aggressive about it, but she also did not pander and play into it. And so I think if we're trying to look for who is an example of a very sexy, beautiful woman who is in her healthy feminine energy in Love is Blind and who ended up single through the show, I think Raven is a perfect example of that. I really can't criticize her behavior. That's just what I have to say about that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to comment on with these first 6 episodes. I feel like that's probably it for now, but I'm hoping that I'm giving you guys at least something to think about, another lens through which to view the show, And I think there's nothing wrong with seeing it as just bubblegum, as just a fun, entertaining show. But I think it can also be such a fascinating opportunity to look at this through the lens of feminine energy and masculine energy, and just paying some attention to how are these energies swirling together? How are they triggering each other? Who is operating from a healthy place? Who is operating from a place that seems a little bit wounded or negative? And how is that creating a different domino effect of energy between everyone else in the experience? Pretty interesting stuff. So my disclaimer, as always, I am not a therapist. I am not a psychologist. I'm not diagnosing anyone. All of this is just my opinion and my observations through my own lens of how I understand feminine energy and masculine energy. Obviously, with the show, there's a lot that gets cut, and we don't get to see every single moment of these people's experience. We're only seeing a very tiny slice. So of course my analysis is based only on what's shown and not what's not shown, because I don't have access to that, unfortunately. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope you guys are having a wonderful week. Definitely let me know what you think of the new episode drop. I definitely will be making some new episode on this podcast about the drop and just my analysis in terms of masculine and feminine energy about it, most likely, just because I think it's super fun to think about, super fun to talk about. And of course, I wanted to plug my membership, the Claim Your Magic membership and community. We're having a blast over there, and I'm gearing up to teach the first live training for that as well, which is going to be on deities and divinity. And then, of course, also gearing up for there to be a group coaching component for my VIP members as well. So check it out. There's going to be a link to all of that in the description of this episode. I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and I will chat with y'all later. Have a lovely day. Bye.